Who's going to win the presidential race? Well, we don't know for sure, but like most things, I believe the answer to the future can be found in the past. We go back and look at history, and in New Hampshire on the Republican side, not a single person who eventually won the nomination did worse than runner-up in New Hampshire. Not saying somebody besides John Kasich and Donald Trump couldn't be the nominee. It would be the first time it's ever happened. Same thing for South Carolina. South Carolina accurately predicted the winner of the nomination each time, except for the last time when Newt Gingrich beat Mitt Romney. But Mitt Romney still came in runner-up. Republican side, Iowa usually doesn't, the person who wins that oftentimes doesn't get the nomination. But on the Democrat side, it's a little different. Howard Dean was favored in 2004 and lost to John Kerry. In 2008, Hillary was favored against Obama but lost, and they all, of course, got the eventual nomination. On New Hampshire for Democrats, it's only about 50-50. South Carolina is about 66% because Jesse Jackson won in 1988, eventually got beat by Michael Dukakis, and John Edwards won in 2004 and eventually got beat by John Kerry. So South Carolina and Iowa may be better for them than New Hampshire. And that's all to say that I thought Rubio would be the nominee on the Republican side, but historically it's never been the case that somebody who did as poorly as 5th place in New Hampshire eventually got the nomination. But all that's well and good, but I think something even scarier for Democrats is that when you go back and look at it, the last 2 times there were successive Democratic presidents, it was because the first one died while in office. FDR and JFK died while they were in office. Their vice presidents took over. The time before that, it was all the way back to pre-Lincoln. We're talking about Franklin Pierce and James Buchanan, when James Buchanan took the nomination from Franklin Pierce at the convention. So the last 3 times don't really count, and there's only been 4 cases in the entire American history where we've had successive Democratic presidents. And the only time that would be similar to this, president who's reached their term limit and then a successor, would be Andrew Jackson and Martin Van Buren 200 years ago. Andrew Jackson was the first Democratic president. So that's a little scary for Dems. So if Hillary was the nominee and she did win the entire general election, that would be the first time that that's happened under those circumstances since Jackson and Van Buren. So the odds are really not in their favor right now. Typically, Democrats do better when a Republican's in the White House and they scare people over to the Democratic side. For Hillary, another thing that may be hurting her is that James Buchanan was the last time there was a Secretary of State who eventually became president. But for Bernie Sanders, it's even worse because his message of economic revolution would really only help if there were a Republican in the White House. Like when FDR and Obama took over when there were recessions and a Republican president. Right now, if there was a recession, it would probably hurt him more than the Republican. And if there's not a recession, then people may wonder why they need an economic revolution, who are moderate or independent. So I think Democrats need to understand that the history is not entirely in their favor right now, and they need to put forward the best possible candidate and the one most likely to win. And right now, if we go by history, Trump would be the Republican nominee, as unlikely and as crazy as that sounds. And I think Hillary's experience and her gender may go a long way towards getting older female voters to vote for her because they don't really like Donald Trump that much. And that's a big, important demographic. People talk about millennial voters, but they're a little bit more reliable and a smaller voter base than older women, kind of the silent majority of the electorate. And I think her as the nominee would help Democrats win that and possibly make history in the mold of Jackson and Van Buren.